What's up, guys? I'm Trey Smith.
And I'm Bailey Smith.
And we are the owners of Recaptured Values. And you are watching Teach It Tuesday.
Hey everybody, it's Bailey Smith from Recaptured Values, and today is Teach It Tuesday. So today's video, we're going to be going over the Striped Swallow Designs. That's the pattern company, and we're going to be doing the baby Emerie Romper. This is a really cute romper. It's actually one of the first rompers that I ever sewed up myself, full piece garment. Besides bows, this is one of the first things that I ever did. So we're revisiting this one. I haven't done this one in quite some time, but it's definitely a favorite. It has a cinched waist with elastic, and it has it features some binding. It features some snaps, and so we're going to be doing all that today. If you guys see some smoke in the corner, that's my essential oils, and you can see it over here. That's my essential oils. I have to do that. I will lose my marbles. I need my essential oils. Comment down below if you need essential oils. No judgment, no judgment. So you're going to be doing the A version. There's A, B, and C. And we're going to be doing the A version today, which is the tank. It's the tank. You'll have a front and a back. Front and back. And then you will also have, on the bottom, you'll have a front and a back. And that's what those are the 4 pattern pieces that you need. I think it was like 4 pages. I think it's 4 pages. And I'm doing the 2T. They do have, this pattern in particular goes from newborn up to 2T. They do have a girl's version that starts at 2T, and it's the shorts version and doesn't have snaps. Super cute. But I'm going to be doing the snaps one because I feel like it's going to show you guys a lot more technique and it's most beneficial to you guys. So 2T version A, Striped Swallow Designs, Emerie Romper. I've already printed it out. I've already cut my pieces out. So what you're going to need, all the pieces are going to be cut on a fold. So that means this piece right here, it says it on the fold. Cut on fold, cut on fold. So you need 1 front, 1 back, top or the bodice, and you'll need 1 front, 1 back bottom, or bloomer is what it's called. So this is the cut chart. This would be the first page of the pattern. See, as you can see, I kind of had to cut the top part of the 2T tank was on this page, but this is one of the pages that you have to cut out. And it includes a cut chart right here on the pattern. So that's pretty cool. And so I'm doing 2T, and so you'll just go right here to your 2T, and you will go to, since we're doing the A view, or view A, you'll do front bloomer binding, back bloomer binding, tank neckline binding, and tank sleeve binding is what you'll need. And you'll also need 1/4 inch elastic, cut at 18.5 inches for the size 2T. So I'm going to go ahead and get that. I almost forgot about my elastic. Knit pop with the hookup for the elastic and the fabric, of course. You guys already know, Teach It Tuesday, that's how we do it. Occasionally we'll have other fabrics, but mainly it's typically knit pop. And this is double brush poly I'm going to be using. I'll go ahead and cut this elastic to size. Of course, you always want to pre-stretch. I did that a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and show you and explain why I do that. Pre-stretch your elastic because with wear and tear, it could get looser over time if you don't go ahead and pre-stretch your elastic. So just stretch it out good a few times and then cut, because it'll stretch out. If you ever want to just see what I'm talking about, go ahead and cut your elastic without stretching it, then stretch it and measure it again and see if it's the same size. So that's the 18.5 piece of elastic that's going to go in the middle. This is a 1/4 inch elastic. All right, so now go ahead and show you guys what I've already done here. So I have got, this is the back bloomer piece that I cut on a fold. No, that's not the bloomer. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, they stick together. So here is the back bloomer piece. Here, the back bloomer piece is going to be longer than the front. So now let me grab the front bloomer piece. And basically you're just going to put them right sides together. We're going to go ahead and get them ready to be constructed. Right sides together. And if you're really awesome, you can do some stripe matching here, but Not really too much worried about that. All right, and so then when you go over to your serger or your sewing machine, you'll either do a zigzag stitch with a sewing machine or a serger, serge stitch here and here, side seams. That piece, then you're gonna do the exact same thing with the top piece. And then this is the back. And you can denote, or you can tell the front and the back based on the scoop of the neck, because the front is going to have a lower scoop. This is the front. And so then you're just gonna match it up here. And then you're gonna do, for this one, remember right sides together. For this particular, the top part, you're gonna do the shoulder seams here, shoulder seam, and the side seams. Either zigzag stitch again, or a serged seam, depending on what you have. Either one's fine. So then I'm just gonna set that there. So those are already ready to go as far as the pieces go and what you need to do. Okie dokie. So moving on, I've already cut my armband pieces. These are my 2 armband pieces. They're actually long. I've already folded them together this way. All right. And so for these ones are going to be bands. Your arms are going to be bands, even though it says it as binding. You can do binding if you want to, but I like to go ahead and do my arms as bands. So you do the same thing if you've watched our bummy video, the hot hem method, the way we do all necklines and all bands, cuffs, whatever. I fold it this way. You guys saw it. I fold it this way. And then I fold it this way. And then you will serge or zigzag stitch this right here. So that's what we're going to do with the neck band, or these ones. And you can also do that with really all of these, but we're going to go ahead and do the binding like the pattern calls for, because that's another skill that we haven't really featured on our page, and we definitely want to feature some skills for you guys so you can learn the most. Okay, so those are the armbands. We're going to do those like bands. The next, we're going to do like binding. And so that's going to be, we're going to serge this. We're not going to do the hot hem method. We're just going to do that one fold and serge right there, and then we'll do something else with that. So we're gonna neckband done, and then the same thing with the bottom piece. This is 2 pieces here. You're gonna have one piece that is 2 inches by whatever length you need. That's gonna be the back one. It's gonna be longer than the front piece, and it's 2 inches by whatever the front piece is. And this is what's gonna go around the bottom of your romper that you actually put your snaps on. So this one, like I said, the front piece is going to be shorter than the back piece because it's stuck together there. Because if you can see this, you have a deeper curve there than this one. So this is the top part is going to require less fabric than the bottom part there. And so for this one, you're going to do pretty much just like the neckband, but you're going to connect both sides here. So you're going to have to put the sides together, serge there, and do the exact same thing here. You just have to pull it to match, just like that. And you'll do this seam and this seam serged. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to the serger and do that. Again, if you don't have a serger, you can use a zigzag stitch, and then I'll come back and we'll prepare everything else. So here are our pieces. And let me make sure I cut all my tail pieces here. So that's the back, or the bloomer piece. And here is the top piece. Grab all the snippers here. And this pattern is going to include snaps. You're going to have snaps to do this pattern, and we like to use cam snaps. I'll explain that all later, what kind of cam snaps we use. They are compliant as far as the safety is concerned. They are lead tested, and it's a very good place. They have a really good snap press that works really good. So, all right, so I've already done my armbands here, and then this is going to be the bloomer banding strip, or the binding strip here, and then the neck for this. So I'm going to go ahead and quarter up my pieces here. So I'm going to use my seam as one piece, and I'm going to just snip a little tiny snip there, a tiny snip there, and then match those snips up with my seam. Hold that piece and then snip again here. And here. And then this side. And again, this is the neck binding strip here. And here. You are going to need a sewing machine to do the binding. If you do not have a sewing machine, then go ahead and do these just like you would do bands, like we're going to do with the armbands here. I'm going to make a point here to do this and this. I'm doing the same thing here. Just making a point so that I can use my seam and my piece here. So then you're just determine, you'll flip them out. That's the inside. And so you'll flip your armband out. Make sure your raw edges are together. And then you can go ahead and get your armbands serged or sewn on to the armhole. It's basically just like any other cuff. We're going to do the bands like that for the arms. You can do binding if you would like. We're going to go ahead and just band the arms. So I like to apply my bands on the outside of the garment. It's just preference. So you will determine where you want your seam to go. If you want the seam to go under the armpit or on the shoulder, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the shoulder. So my armband seam here, I'm just going to go ahead and match it up to my shoulder seam. And I don't think I mentioned, but the seam allowance on this pattern, it says that it is I think 3/8 inch. Yes, a 3/8 inch seam allowance is included in this pattern. So just make sure you're using that when you're constructing all your seams and adding all your cuffs or binding, just to make sure that the garment's going to fit properly. All right, so we got one armband, and then we'll just go ahead and attach the other one. And if you're not comfortable doing bands with 2 points, you can absolutely make 4 if that will help you stretch more evenly. It's totally just your skill level and what you're comfortable with doing. I like to just make 2 points, but I've been doing this for a while, so if you're not comfortable doing that and you want to make 4, go right ahead. The more points, the easier it is to evenly gather. And so this armband, it's fitting, or this neckband, or it is armband. This armband is actually fitting pretty good. So you're not going to have to stretch that much of the arm opening. So then that's what that's going to look like. And then you'll just serge around or sew if you have a zigzag stitch. And make sure that you're catching the 2 raw edges of your armband cuff and the 1 raw edge of your armband opening. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm just going to serge around in a circle, and I'll come right back. Okay, so we added our armbands here, and that's how they look on. I'll go ahead and show you. Crazy string there. Okay, that's how they look on. The armbands, that's how the bands look. And so now we're going to do binding on the neck. But before we do that, we need to quarter our neck band, our neck opening here. So I'm going to do 1 point in the back and 1 point right directly in the front. And then since the back is higher than the front, these shoulder seams will not be your second points. So you need to match up that front and back point that you just snipped. Let me snip the front a little bit deeper. Okay, and then you will find your true final 2 points, which should be a little bit before the shoulder seam on the front bodice. Looks like it's about 1/2 inch in front of the shoulder seam allowance. All right, so I have a point, a point, a point, and a point. And we're gonna do the same thing, which we've already done that with our neck binding piece. So to do this is kind of like cheat binding if you don't have a cover stitch, which would make this super simple. this is how you do it with a sewing machine. So you're going to flip your bodice wrong side out, and then you need to pick where you want your seam to go. So we're just going to put it in the back middle point. You need 4 pins to match up your points here. And so for this, it's going to be a little different than we're used to because it's binding. And we're not going to do 2 raw edges of a cuff. We're just going to do 1 raw edge of the cuff, or this binding strip. And we're going to do the raw edge of the neck opening. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's going to be right side against wrong side. Because when you flip it up, you'll see the right side on the fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm literally just matching up my point here. That's the back bodice. That's the right side of the back bodice. And so I am placing the neck binding strip right side to wrong side of the back bodice neckline. And I'm just going to make a pin here, just like this. And then I'm just going to go around, and again, you're just matching the one edge of this neck binding strip. Don't do 2 like a normal cuff. This is just 1 edge for a binding strip. And you're just going around, making sure all your points match up. So when you get all your points matched up, then you are going to, it says not to serge, but I think I'm going to go ahead and serge and see what happens, because there's another pattern company that lets you serge, and it works pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and serge this on here and see how it goes. So we'll see. Okay, so I serged that on there, and like I said, the pattern instructions say don't to serge. So I think the only reason that I can see why you wouldn't want to serge is because you lose your points that you made potentially because it cut off a piece. But that's no big deal. Okay, so we're gonna flip it right side out and create our binding. And I'm gonna flip the serged edge up. You guys can see that I'm flipping the serged edge up. I'm gonna get some points or some pins here. And I'm gonna fold the binding to the serged edge. And then I'm gonna flip it over that. So there is the binding strip attached to the bodice. There's one of the snips we did. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold this seam allowance, you're going to push it up, and then you're going to fold this down to the serge seam a little bit above it because I didn't do a good seam allowance there. And then you're just going to fold it again and pin here, and that's going to create your binding, and you will just edge stitch with a sewing machine. You pretty much just do that all the way around wherever you need to place a pin to help make sure your binding is even all the way around. It's a little bit more time consuming, but it's a super cute outcome, totally worth it. And this one has a lot more steps, so you'll feel super accomplished once you are done. And you're tackling some pretty awesome concepts here as far as binding goes and as far as applying snaps go. But the cam snap, or the cam snap press, dear Lord, it really kind of does the job for you. So I didn't have a cam snap press when I first started, and we just have the handheld one. There's actually a table press that's even more fancy schmancy. We haven't upgraded to that just yet. We don't really do many garments with snaps, so we couldn't justify spending tons of money on the table press, which makes the job even quicker. Alright, I'm going to do one more pin over here, and then I'll count my pins and let you guys know how many I used. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pins there. So there's just now 4 or another pin in between my original 4 pieces here. So then what you're going to do is you're just going to edge stitch to catch this outside part here all the way around. And I'm going to use a straight stitch, but I'm going to lengthen it to 3.5. And I'm going to bring you guys with me to see this step. Okay, I'm at my just standard sewing machine here. It's a Singer Stylist. And I'm going to do just a simple straight stitch at 3.5 width, 3.5 length. And I'm just going to edge stitch as close as possible, making sure that I catch this edge and just stitching around. So I'm going to start at a shoulder seam just in case. And then instead of just pushing the presser foot, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I like where my needle is going to land with my hand over here, just manually pushing the needle down. And then once I get it to the spot where I want it to go and I get it in the fabric, I will then rearrange my fabric and just make sure that my binding stays where I want it to go. And as I'm going around, I will make sure that my binding doesn't roll or reveal that serge seam. And I'm going to go ahead and remove my pins as I go because I feel like it's going to create a wrinkle if I don't. Okay, and then I'm just going to keep going. And then when you go back to where you started, you're just going to go over it and then back stitch. So connect the piece that you started with and then back stitch a little bit, go forward, back stitch again. I just like the double back stitch there. Alright. And that looks pretty dang awesome. And that's just the binding. It looks pretty awesome. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. The bodice part is done. We just need to finish the bottom, which we're going to do the exact same thing we just did to the neckband with a thicker piece. And then we're also going to do the, then we'll add the bodice to the bloomers. So, okay, so we're at the serger, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys this step. So we need to quarter this piece here, and in order to do that, we're going to match up the seams, and again, the front is going to be shorter than the back. This is the front, and this is the back part of the binding strip. So I'm going to match up my seams here, and then I'm going to snip on both sides of this, and then snip on both sides of this end. And it's literally just a tiny snip so I can know, you know, where I need to pin this. And then you're the same thing again with this piece. It's going to be exactly the same as the neck binding strip. The garment is going to be wrong side out, and you are going to place the binding strip right side to wrong side. So these seams, you'll need to make sure that you know which piece is the front piece and which piece is the back piece. So of course the shorter piece is going to go on the front, so you want to make sure that you're matching it up correctly here. But first, before we do that, of course, we need to make our snips on this piece here. So I'm going to match up my seams here, make sure I've got that equaled out, and I'm going to make a snip there. Just making my 4 equal points here. And again, this is not going to be extremely equal as far as you're needing to make sure, you know, that your 4 points are equal, because the front is higher than the back. In the binding strip, the way they have you do it, it already accounts for that. So as long as you're matching up your seams on your binding strip and making your front or your points with this front piece and this back piece, and then matching it accordingly, it should be fine. So I'm going to start with a side seam here and make sure that I know what's the front and what's the back. This is the back, This is the front. So I'm going to make sure that my binding strip is doing the exact same thing. So it needs to go this way. And I am going to nest this seam here, which means, show you, if this seam is going this way, the actual bloomer part, you guys can't see that, this one's going this way, and the binding strip seam is going to go that way, and so the seam is actually right smack dab in the middle. This makes it less bulkier. All right, for my final pieces. And then I guess it's going to be important. I'm still trying to figure out why they said don't serge this, because I mean it worked just fine for me. I guess you wouldn't serge it because, or if you're not familiar with how to serge, I don't know. If your tensions aren't correct on your machine, I didn't change anything to what I normally do. 3.5, 3.5, 4.5, 4.5, and you guys can see my side settings here. I didn't change anything, and it worked just fine for the neckband, so I'm going to go ahead and keep serging. And then you pretty much just make sure that your edge is matching up here. And follow the pattern of the fabric, the way that you actually cut it. This bottom piece is going to require you to make sure that your edges are together. I like to go ahead and serge my curves. Make sure you're removing your pins. And then here we go on the back side, or this may be the front side. I think this is the front side. Just making sure that your edges are all matched up. And that you're getting even serged edge. Almost back to the point where we started. And I'm just going to go over it. And try not to cut any off. You can turn your knife off if you need to. If you don't have a steady hand. And then this we're going to tuck with our knit picker. I'll link this down below. It has changed my life after the frustrations of figuring out how to use it, of course. Basically, you just open this little thing here. It's got a little finger thing, and you open it. And then I like to make sure that I'm going where the seam just came from, because I feel like if you put it in this, when you stretch, it could pop out. I like to put it over here where you just went over. And so you're going to stick this, wedge it in between the two fabrics in the middle of the seam. It takes some practice to make sure that you like, you know, the movement. But once you get the movement down, it's super easy. And then you're going to come out about right there. Make sure that it's all the way out, and you open this again and wrap your thread around that. Close your little thing and pull it through. It always tries to act crazy when I do this on camera, but when I'm actually doing this, it's not hard. But it pretty much did it. And then you'll just snip this little piece here. I promise this thing's not hard, but every time I do it on camera, it's like it gets stage fright. Exactly like we just did with the neck. So go ahead and flip your seam up. Flip your seam up. Turn this right side out. Flip your seam up. Fold this over. And make sure your seam is actually where it needs to go. And fold this over. And then you can figure out how far you need to fold over based on this. Feel and see, make sure that your front and your back piece here are matching up. Again, if you do not have a sewing machine and all you have is a serger, you can attach these just like a band. They will be a little wavy, but they will still function the same. You'll still be able to add snaps the I just wanted to show you guys how to do the binding. It is a little bit more tedious, but once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard. And it looks super cool. I'm gonna go ahead and do the side seam here. Now I know why they said not to serge, because you don't know how long or how much to keep in the back. Because with the serger, the seam allowance is going to be different. But as long as you fiddle with it enough, you can figure out where it needs to go. What I mean by that is you're going to have a space in here that's not as thick in your binding to make sure that the front is matching up with the back side. And if you just sewed it on with a straight stitch or a stretch straight stitch, it would have been simpler. Of course. Follow the instructions, people. And now I understand why that other company probably says it's okay to serge, because their binding strip is not this big. The bigger the binding strip, the more you're going to have to pay attention to the seam allowance you use when you're attaching this binding strip originally to the garment. And I see that. So, you guys are learning with me. We're all learning. And so all I'm doing pretty much to rectify that is I am making sure that the seam is up, and I folded this down about that much. And then I'm folding it over the seam, and then I'm just using my fingers to feel the front and the back and making sure they're matching up. That's pretty much all I'm doing to rectify that. That is one thing I can for sure say when you're following along with us for the video tutorials. The instructions do typically differ from what we're saying to do. So when in doubt, they wrote really good instructions for these patterns. There are just some things that after a few years of experience that I have done differently, just because once you learn how to do a skill, you can, figure out a different way to do it, just like math. When the teacher teaches you a specific way to do math, there are other ways to find the answer that may work better for you. So that's just what I've done, and I sometimes do in these videos. So when you're like, wait, what is she doing? And you don't really quite understand it, either ask the questions down below or follow your instructions if it's too confusing, because I don't ever want you to be discouraged from doing the video or doing the tutorial from the video. So alright, I'm pretty satisfied with the way this is on there now. Alright, same settings, 3.5 by 3.5. I'm going to start on a side seam here, and we're edge stitching exactly like we did the other part here. And it did recommend that in the pattern instructions that if you wanted to add like an interfacing to the front pieces where the snaps would go, you can. I find that it's just fine as long as you're using a sturdy snap press, and that's just what I found. So we're gonna edge stitch all around here, just make sure we're covering up the seam. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't have any wrinkles, and then I'm making sure that this binding strip is still covering up this seam here, and that the front and the back are still lining up as I go around this curve. And as you can see, I'm not taking these pins out. I just realized that. Just because I feel like this one has more control. Because it's a much wider piece than the neck band was, or the neck binding piece was. This looks a lot better than when I first did binding back in 2018 when my daughter was born. So We go ahead and remove all of these handy dandy pins. Put them back in the pin thing. All 50 million of them. Okay. So, if you want to look at it. And then it just needs a good press to make sure that it's sitting correctly. But, again, happy with the result. Okay, so now we've got the bodice complete. And we've got the bottom part complete here. The bloomer's complete. I'm just going to go ahead and snip my end pieces here that I hadn't snipped off. We're going to add the snaps at the very end. Alright, so you just need to make sure that you know what you're working with. You know that your front is up and your front piece is up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and flip my bloomers wrong side out. And I'm going to make sure that the top piece is on top. And then with my piece here, my bodice piece, I'm going to turn this way, right side out. Bodice, right side out. I'm going to put it inside the bloomer part here. So I'm going to pull this inside here and then match up the side seam here. This fabric is kind of sticking to itself. Match up my seams here. And this should fit perfectly inside. So, well, it's not going to require any stretching to do this. So just make sure that, you know, it's evenly laying flat when you pin it. And if you want to make sure that it's perfect, you can go ahead and quarter this part too if you want to. It's not absolutely necessary. And then I'm going to pin it up, or hold it up and show you what it looks like pinned. Alright, so it's important that you're making sure that your front bodice is on the same side as the front bloomer. Because then you're going to have one side backwards and one side frontwards. And frontways. So that's how it looks. This is now the inside. Open it up for you to see. That's the inside of the romper. Alright, so you're going to go to your sewing machine and you're going to use a 3/4 seam allowance and then do a straight stitch with the 3/4 seam allowance. So to achieve the 3/4 seam allowance, my sewing machine comes with these cool seam allowance line guides that you need to follow, or that you can follow easily, and you just make sure your fabric stays on that line. So 3/4 is going to be right here, and it's actually marked. So just whatever sewing machine you're using, look that up. Most of the time they will have that, so just look that up. And we're going to be doing the exact same straight stitch, 3.5 by 3.5. And you're doing the straight stitch all the way around. Don't stretch your garment, and make sure that you're staying with that 3/4. I'm going to go slow just to make sure that I'm getting it perfectly even. So for this one, we are going to make sure that we go right back over where we started. And we're closing this one off. Basically what you're doing is you're creating a casing for your elastic to go in. So there's that piece, and then what you're going to do is you're going to serge this next piece. Let's go over to the serger. Okay, so for this one, you are going to leave an opening. Let me go ahead and snip these pieces here. So for this, you're going to leave an opening. You're not going to close off this one because you're actually going to put your elastic in this piece. Make sure those little pieces. Okay. So I'm going to start. I don't like to start at the front. So I'm going to start at the back corner here. And then I'm just going to serge. Making sure I'm removing my pins. I mean, I'm barely cutting anything off, so it's about a 1/4 inch. So I'm almost back to where I started, and I'm not going to go over where I started. I'm not going to go over there. I'm going to leave about 1 inch opening, so make sure you're paying attention to your needle. And then I'm going to pull away. That's definitely less than 1 inch, but it'll work. Alright, so I left a tiny opening there for my elastic to go in. Alright, so I have my elastic here. Don't connect them together. Don't make a circle. You're going to thread this through the casing now, through that opening that you just left. And I like to go ahead and attach the safety pin to the edge. Make sure it's secure, because there's nothing more frustrating than your safety pin detaching from your elastic after you are so close to almost having it threaded through your casing. And so then you're going to stick this in just like this. And then you're just going to go all the way around, pulling that safety pin around the garment. Making sure that you pay attention to the ends so that you don't pull it through. That's frustrating as well. Just keep an eye on it. And then also make sure that you're not twisting your elastic. Make sure it's still going the same way that you put it in. Alright, almost. And then you can also go back and feel, just to make sure that your elastic hasn't turned. It's not the end of the world if it has, but it just definitely makes for a more seamless look. And then you pull your elastic out here. Take your safety pin off. Oops, it doesn't go there. Alright, and then you're just going to overlap here. Again, make sure that you feel the way the elastic is going and you're overlapping correctly so that you don't have a big bulge. And you make sure that your elastic is facing the way it's supposed to be facing. And then you'll just use, you can zigzag stitch, back stitch over this if you want to. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just do that real fast underneath my sewing machine. Alright, so back at my sewing machine, I literally just overlapped. I made sure, overlapped, zigzag stitch, so when you pull this, it's not going to come undone. And then, of course, that is going to go in there. And then you just have to finish off this little hole that you left open. You can go ahead and serge over it again. I'm going to go ahead and do that real fast. I'm going to just serge that opening to close it. Alright, so I just serged over that spot, closed the hole, and that's how that goes. And so then you can open it up, and you're almost done. All you have to do now is top stitch the casing that you just made, and you can decide whether you want the casing to flip up, which will make the top part shorter and the bottom part longer, or if you want it to flip down. Really just depends. And what I mean by that is this casing under here, if you want it to flip down, which is how it's laying right now, or you want to flip it up and top stitch it up here, or if you want to top stitch it down here. It really just depends on how you want that seam to lay. I'm going to go ahead and make mine go up just to see how that looks. And so pretty much what I just do is push this under here and make sure this goes back after zigzag stitching that elastic to the straight stitch. And you're just going to use your seam here the serged edge, and so of course this is the top. I have my seam facing up because I want the top stitch to go on the top part here. It really doesn't matter where you go, where you want it to go, but so you're just going to stretch your elastic to lay flat and just follow your serged seam here. Just going to follow that and top stitch it, or it's really not a top stitch, it's an edge stitch, but still. Just be careful not to get the elastic caught in your stitching. You just hold it flat. And again, I'm just using the serged seam as a guide to make this as even as possible. Alright, almost back to where we started. And I'm just kind of making sure that I'm pulling the fabric to make sure that seam is all the way open. Almost back to where I started. Back stitch just a little bit. Make sure that you're going in a straight line because it will be visible on the other side. As you can see, mine was not all the way straight. Let me grab my snippers. Okay, so then you're just going to make sure that all your little ends are snipped. Alright, and then you'll have some on the inside too. Well, it looks like they came through the other side, so they're not that important. Alright, now all we have to do is add snaps to this, and it is done. Okay, so here is the romper. I'll go ahead and lay it out. So that's how the romper looks before you add snaps. And literally snaps, all the snaps are gonna do is just make sure that it's easier to wear. Of course, you could just do your neck hole or whatever, but snaps are how this romper goes. So, like I said, we use the cam snap, and this is the little press we have. It is the handheld press. You can actually put it, like sit it on the table if you want to, and it kind of stands up by itself. But this is the handheld press, and we really like this a lot. I think it was maybe $50, but a really good purchase, really simple. We used to use the one from Hobby Lobby, Snap Source or something, I don't know, or Dritz, it might be the Dritz one, and it didn't really work that well. Our snaps kept popping off. There was just no proper way to do it. It didn't work. This is the only thing that we have found that has secured snaps like nobody's business. So this is for, we got the dies for this, which are these little things that screw on and off. You get the top part and the bottom part, and they're specific to this type of snap that you use. So we're using the cam snap, open ring, silver, 16, size 16 is what we're using. So you have to make sure that your die or the die matches the snap here. So you're going to do 3 snaps on the bottom and 3 snaps on the top. So you need 6 of these little guys. And these are the little prongs. Alright. And you will need 3 of the male part of the snap. And then you will need 3 of the female part of the snap. Okay, and what I like to do is go ahead and even out the middle snap here. So I'm going to match up my side seams. And I'm just going to match up my point here. You need to make sure that you're marking on the part that the snap's actually going to go onto, which is going to be the inside here. So the bottom part here is to be the inside. And I'll just make a little dot where that first snap's going to go. And this one is actually going to be, the front piece is actually going to be the outside where the snap goes. That's where that male snap's going to go. Alright. open this back up, move this all out of the way, make sure I got this thing ready to go. Okay, so if you're familiar with any type of bodysuit or onesie, you know how the snaps go, and that is that the male snap goes here, and that the female snap goes here, and that you snap over and close it like that. That's just how I prefer, and that's how I've seen it done. So you're gonna get your little die press here, and it's really cool because you can put your open ring with the prongs on there. I actually do that last. So we're gonna do the male one first. So that's the one with the little pointy end, and you put it into your press like this and stick that piece in there so that it's flush, and then you put that piece in there like that. So now you have this set in there and this set in there, and when you squeeze it together it will press, but you have to put your fabric in between where you're going to squeeze, and then you just sit your fabric on top where you made your mark. I like to go ahead and squeeze it gently just to make sure that I like where it's holding before I go ahead and give it a final squeeze. And so then I'm just going to squeeze it good, and that is perfect. It's a perfectly good snap. And so I'm going to go ahead and do the female part here for that one. And so for these snaps, oops, boop, you have to pay attention to how it goes. So that's going to be the part that the prongs go into, and that's going to be the part that you see. So this part is the part that needs to go like this. The part that the prongs goes into is the part that is of course facing the prongs, and then you put your open ring in and do the exact same thing, but now with this piece. And again, I like to just go ahead and make sure, give it a gentle squeeze just to make sure that it's lining up with where I want it to go before I finally just squeeze it. And I'm like, it doesn't require much strength at all. Oop, I just realized y'all are out of focus. It doesn't require much strength at all to do this, which is really great for people, especially people who have arthritis possibly. And so there's one snap. And then I'm gonna do the other ones really quick. And you just pretty much space them out evenly. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that, and then just space my snaps out evenly. I'm gonna go ahead and use, where did that go? I'll just use my ruler, whatever. Okay. I'm gonna space them out about 1 inch from the edge of this. So about right there. The same thing with this one. It's about right there. I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side. Just 1 inch from the edge. This is totally preference as far as where you want your snaps to go. Just make sure that they're even, because it makes your garment look really good when they're even. So I'm gonna do this super quick because you guys saw how I did it. I used to dread doing snaps until we got this press, so it's definitely worth it if you do lots of garments with snaps. And if you want to be compliant, it's a great option. If you're selling clothes, you have to be compliant. So this is a great company that has compliant tools, compliant snaps that meet the lead requirements. They are tested for lead. They are safe. You can get your certifications from them on their website, and you're good to go. Okay guys, so then this is how the romper is after it's already sewn up, and it has that elastic waist, elastic cinched waist, and it's got your snaps, and you've got your binding that you did for the top and the bottom, and it looks super nice and professional. And that's how it goes. And then of course, you know, to be compliant, you just put a tag. You could do a side seam there, or you could of course, you know, include it into your binding here, whichever way you want to do it. Just make sure that you're tagging your stuff. We'll link a group down below on Facebook that's really good for compliance if you're totally freaking out and don't know how to do that. It's a really great starting point for that. They're a great group of ladies. I do recommend that you check the free information out before you start asking questions, because they give a ton of information that's really easy to understand if you just take the time to learn how to do it. So make sure that you're doing this safely, especially when you're using snaps. They have to be tested for lead, and like I said, Cam Snap actually did make sure that they were tested for lead, and they have the certifications to prove that, which you will need to provide to be compliant. So this is how the Emerie Romper looks from Stripe Swallow Designs. Hope you guys liked this video. I know it was a little bit longer, but it's a super cute video. You learned a whole bunch of new steps in here, so you might want to replay it and dive into those. Again, what we can take away from this is to follow the instructions, because when they say something, you typically, mean it. But we made it work. Alright guys, hope you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Bye!